Do it now. Okay, so as we were discussing that whatever data that we are having or whatever static data that we are not initializing from our layout, that we need to have it somewhere in the resource. So as we have already seen a component of a spinner, so स्पिनर का जितना भी डेटा है कि स्पिनर में आपको ड्रॉप डाउन है, स्पिनर का या तो फिर लिस्ट है, उसमें आपको जो भी इनिशियलाइज करना है, वॉट एवर डेटा यू वांट टू प्रोवाइड टू द यूजर, that you can set it somewhere in your resource. So in a resource folder, you see your values over here. You have a subfolder values. Within the subfolders, you have a string.xml. So now this string.xml is basically the file where you can mention your arrays, or maybe you can mention some of the data which are getting repeatedly present in your application here and there. So let's say मेरे को एप्लीकेशन का नाम हम हर एक एक्टिविटी पेज पे दिखाना है, या तो मेरे को ये वेलकम नोट हर एक पेज पे दिखाना है, राइट? सो वट एवर डेटा पार्ट और वट एवर स्टैटिक स्ट्रिंग पार्ट इज देयर, तो फॉर दैट व्हाट वी कैन डू इज वी कैन डायरेक्टली कीप देम इन दिस पर्टिकुलर स्ट्रिंग डॉट एक्सएमएल. सो सेम वे जो मेरा स्पिनर है कि जहाँ पे स्पिनर में मेरे को क्या दिखाना है, लेट्स से मेरे को यूजर को ग्रेड 1 to 10 दिखाना है, तो आई कैन सिंपली क्रिएट अ स्ट्रिंग एरे ओवर हियर and initialize them with help of the items over here. So then this particular string, I can use it in the student registration form. I can use it maybe, let's say, in the result, I want user to select the grade again. That there also I can using the same set of the data. So whatever static components are present, whatever static data or the static strings are present on your part, you can easily do it from this particular string.xml. So now in the student form1.java, what we did with the array adapter was we informed that for the current file, my data will be from R, that is resource, the resource array, and the name of that resource array is grades. So you can see over here, the string array with the name grade is being created and placed in the string.xml. Then what particular type of layout I want to use. So whenever you are using an adapter, you also need to mention the layout for the same. Android.r.layout, simple spinner item. Now see, this layout is different from the UI screen that we are talking about. This is a layout for a specific UI component. So since we are using a normal spinner over here, so this particular part will work for the normal spinner. So you can see that I have several options available: spinner item, spinner drop down item, activity list. So according to select dialog item are there. So this particular component, how your list will look like, what type of a list view you want to provide to the user, you can select it from here. So this third particular parameter is with respective to the UI component that you are having. So once this particular adapter is done, so what task you have done in this particular adapter? Just to quickly make you understand, for this particular form, you have initialized the grades array with spinner component. सो दैट इज व्हाट यू आर डूइंग नाउ. दिस अडेप्टर इज रेडी. आपको अडेप्टर को लेके क्या करना है, जो आपके एक्चुअल कंपोनेंट है उसके साथ लिंक करना पड़ेगा. हमारा एक्चुअल कंपोनेंट कहाँ पे प्रेजेंट है? आर एक्चुअल कंपोनेंट इज अ स्पिनर ड्रॉप डाउन विच इज प्रेजेंट इन अ यूआई file which is there. So for that UI file and UI component, we have already bounded that to a spinner grid. So here in this next two line, once your adapter is set to a drop down part, what we are doing is spin. Just a minute. Android. Okay. So once you have mentioned that our spinner is a drop down spinner, what we do in the third part is here we mention that for this particular spinner, this is a adapter. With this adapter will give me the data first, and the second thing that adapter will give me is the look and feel of what selection I can do and how it should be displayed. So all such things that you are having, this to particular part, it gets an adapter ready. In the third line which is there, set adapter basically links your spinner with those data component in their look and feel. So from this, at any later stage, let's suppose कि अभी हमने ग्रेड का स्पिनर रखा है. अगर मेरे को ये ग्रेड के स्पिनर में से ग्रेड वर्ड निकाल देना है, 1 to 10 को रीनेम करना है, एनीथिंग दैट आई वांट टू डू, आई कैन सिंपली डू इट ओवर हियर एंड इट कैन वर्क ऑन any application or any particular activity screen that we are talking about. So many a time when you are working with the list, when you are working with the spinner, when you are working with the drop down, this is a usual practice of having a separate adapter so that there is a reusability. So this is the first change of the code that we are noticing with perspective to the previous one. Now, similarly, as soon as a user clicks on a submit button, we already have the student data. Let's say student is entered name, age, gender, selected everything appropriately. So what we are doing is that we are trying to extract the data that the user is entered. So what is the name, what is the age, what is the gender ID user is selected. Now you can see over here that I'm extracting the name and the age. Now, within the radio group, which I am having over here, which is the actual group, not the radio buttons implicitly, right? So for that, I'm selecting a ID, and based on the ID, I'm selecting it. So let's say if I'm clicking on a male, I'll get a ID as a one. If I click on a female, I'll get the second ID, and so on. So once the IDs are extracted, I'm extracting the gender. At the last, I'm also extracting the item selected for a spinner, that is grade 1, grade 2, and so on. So once this all things are done, there are few things that you can carry out. Either on the click of a submit button, you store it in the database, you show it back to the user, depending on what your scenario is. So here I'm using two things to understand, which is a usual practice. That is, one is the toast practice. That is, you can just simply inform the user that this many things are selected. So for that, we have a concept known as a toast over here. सो टोस्ट एंड्रॉइड में एक बेसिकली छोटा सा आपको नोटिफिकेशन आता है, जैसे ही भी आप जहां पे भी आपने टोस्ट कॉन्फ़िगर किया है, लेट्स से आपने बटन पे टोस्ट कॉन्फ़िगर किया, तो वो क्या करेगा, आपको एक मैसेज दिखाएगा, इट विल शो यू अ पॉपअप, और वो मैसेज में आपने टोस्ट का जो कंटेंट लिखा है वो रिप्रेजेंट होगा. So for this particular form, that is the current activity which we are talking about, I want to display a message, and then what is the length of the toast, right? आपको कितना दिखाना है, right? Not the length of the content, the timing per se over here. So short, long, and so on, you can also configure it, and your toast message will be shown back to the user. Now see, please remember, ये जो toast message होते हैं, they are just for your informatory purpose. They are not used for any other purposes in the Android. They are just a prompt. Let's say आपने कोई select कर दिया और user को सिर्फ highlight करना है कि मैंने ये select किया है, तो वो एक छोटा सा prompt दे देगा toast का. So for this particular part, you are not storing any data, you are not maintaining any flow or anything. Now, what we can do is, once your data is entered by the user, we can send those data to the other file, other pages, or other activity screen which are there. Now, for that, we are using a concept known as a intent. Now, we are going to see the details of the intent. I previously talked about that. We have two types of intent in Android. One is the implicit intent and one is the explicit intent. So we are going to see several applications for that. Implicit intent यानी ये होता है कि जहाँ पे आपको नहीं पता कौन सा एप्लीकेशन ओपन करना है, आपको ये पता है कि मेरे को ये काम करना है, बट वो कौन सा एप्लीकेशन मैं चूज करूंगा. लेट्स से 3 डिफरेंट एप्लीकेशन, आई कैन चूज एप्लीकेशन 1 2 3. तो दैट इज एन इम्प्लिसिट इंटेंट. एक्सप्लिसिट इंटेंट वो होते हैं जहाँ पे हमें पता है कि हमें यहाँ से कौन सा एप्लीकेशन ओपन करना है. So for this particular example, which is a student detail form, what I'll do now is I'll run this particular student form parallelly to understand the concept of the intent. Okay. So now you can see the application on my screen over here, which asks me to enter the detail of the student. So let's say I'm entering age, let's say 12. I'm entering, let's say female. I'm entering grade, let's say 6 over here. So now you can see how the spinner looks like. You can see the look and feel of the spinner. My data is being populated with help of my string.xml file, which is there. So I click on, let's say, grade 6. I'll just hide this keypad over here. Now, as soon as I click on the submit button, just want to focus, keep a focus on the bottom part of the screen. So as soon as I click on a submit button, you will see a toast message 1, name, age. That's it. This is a toast message that you will be seeing. This is the first thing which will occur when you click on it. The second thing which is occurring over here is as soon as I click on a button, I'm going to somewhere else where the name is displayed, the age is displayed, the gender and the grade that I have selected is getting displayed. So now for this particular part, this particular screen to be displayed to the user, what we are doing is whatever data that we have entered on the screen 1, we are storing it somewhere and then we are displaying it back on the screen number 2. So now for that, what we are doing is we are using a concept known as the intent. So for the intent, you need to pass, you need to create an object of the intent. You need to pass two things as an argument. First, from where you want to call the intent and from that particular place where you want to go. आपको कहाँ से इंटेंट कॉल करवाना है और वहां से आपको कहाँ पे जाना है या तो वहां कहाँ से आपको डेटा पास करना है। तो ये जो पहला वाला होगा वो आपका एक्चुअल एक्टिविटी स्क्रीन जहाँ पे अभी आप वर्क कर रहे हो वो रहेगा। और सेकंड क्या रहेगा जहाँ पे आपको डेटा डिस्प्ले करवाना है या तो जहाँ से डेटा एक्सट्रैक्ट भी करवा सकते हो आप। सो देर आर वेरियस थिंग्स दैट यू कैन डू इन द इंटेंट। So intent first, like in this particular scenario, we are using it for passing the data from form number 1 to the detail 1 page. So here, first of all, I need to initialize from and to that I have already done. From this particular activity, I want to the Java class, which is student details 1. So that is my second activity screen, which I am going to work with. Now, what I want to pass to that class, do I simply want to open that particular activity? No, I also want to pass the data. So for that, we have put extra methods. So put extra method are basically key value pairs that you can send to the other activity screen. So intent dot put extra name and the name entered by the user. The age is the variable, the age is the key that you are keeping. The value will be coming from the age that the user has entered from this particular part. So you have whatever data that you have extracted, you can pass it using a key value pair concept over here. That is the name, age, gender, and grade I am passing using a put extra. And the third thing which I am doing in the intent is to start. So as soon as you do a start activity, this will give a message to your Android that now from this particular activity screen, I'm going to the another activity screen. So that is how the user flow will occur, or rather we call it as the activity flow. So this is the first part of the activity flow over here. Now, this particular part is going to the student details 1 dot class. Now you have already seen that in my student detail 1 page, what I am getting displayed is I'm just displaying the data which is entered by the user as it is. I'm not doing any change. I'm not modifying anything. Let's say I'm just, I'll deselect few of the options and change it. Okay. Now, as soon as I go over here, you can see the changes which I have done. So there are a few things that you might have noticed. One, data is getting passed. Second thing you are noticing is that I can go back to the previous screen, I can modify the data and I can come back to the screen number 2 as well. So I hope everyone have noticed this thing. So that I think, is there any questions? I don't know, there are some chat, so maybe. Okay, fine. This is how the screen looks like. So when you are working with the Android, you need to make sure the activity stack. The activity stack says that आपका एक्टिविटी नंबर 1 कौन सा होना चाहिए, एक्टिविटी 2 नंबर कौन सा होना चाहिए, एक्टिविटी 3 कौन सा होना चाहिए ना। यहाँ पे आपको चीज एक याद रखना ये है, जब भी आप एक एक्टिविटी से दूसरा एक्टिविटी को कॉल करोगे, आपका एक्टिविटी डिस्ट्रॉय नहीं होगा. द एक्टिविटी विल बी देयर बट इट विल बी प्रेजेंट इन द बैकग्राउंड स्टेट. सो जब तक आप उस पे वापस नहीं आते हो उसका स्टेट पॉज रहेगा. And as soon as you come back to that that activity screen again, it will resume its working to the previously stored state, as you can see it in this particular example over here. So now let's go to the student detail file which is there. I'll just show you a layout. There is only just what we are doing is we are displaying the data that we have entered. Okay, I'll just hide this one. Okay. So now you can see this particular student activity details which I am having. So here I am doing what is I'm just displaying the data that is entered by the user, that is basically the name, age, gender and the grades which I am having in a normal text view. Now since I am using a text view over here, I'm not doing any particular option, any dynamicity over here. I'm just displaying the data which is entered by the user in this four particular subfield. That is the name, age, gender, and the grade. So let me go back to the Java part, how we are actually extracting the data that the form has passed. That is the important part when you work with the Android. Let me just close this one. Okay. So now in the student details one.java, so in this file, what we are doing is, first of all, what task we are doing is, हमें हमने जो भी डेटा फॉर्म में एंटर किया हुआ है, that is getting passed from an intent, which is a bundle that we want to extract it over here in the student detail. तो intent का जो भी object है, वो हमें यहाँ पे student detail one में extract करना है. So what we are doing is, from this particular activity file, apart from binding the components of your UI, we are doing the extracting the intent which is being passed. So you can simply see over here that intent, get intent is the function that you can do in order to extract the data which is getting passed. So here we will get an object of the intent कि जहाँ पे हमने student form से data pass किया था. अभी उसको extract कैसे करना है? There we have used the function known as a put extra to store the data. Here we are using the get string extra to extract the data based on the keys that you have defined. तो यहाँ पे जो name, age, gender and grades are there, this four thing you should be this particular four keys should be present in your student form one, otherwise you will not be able to do so. So these are the two concepts of working with the intent. One, first of all, in the student form one, what we did was we have created the intent जहाँ पे हमने बताया कि कौन से एक्टिविटी से कौन से एक्टिविटी पे जाना है. So this is my activity number one and this is my activity number two. What data do I want to pass to that activity? And once this particular object is ready, I call the activity number टू. यहाँ पे एक्टिविटी कॉल कैसे हो रहा है? यहाँ पे इंटेंट पे आपने यहाँ पे जो सेकंड पैरामीटर में जो भी नाम लिखा होगा वो एक्टिविटी को आप विथ स्टार्ट एक्टिविटी फंक्शन कॉल कर सकते हो. तो यहाँ पे फर्स्ट पर्टिकुलर फाइल में हमने तीन टास्क किए. वी इनिशियलाइज द इंटेंट, वी kept the data ready, and the third thing that we do was start the activity from the current activity screen. Now in the second screen of the activity we extracted the intent and we extract object of the intent and we extracted all the variables that we have initialized in the first intent screen. So this is a standard example of how to work with the intent for data passing. Now intent has a several other purpose, so we'll see that in a detail in a while. But सबसे पहला task intent का data passing, or it works as a messenger from one application to another. So that is how you can pass the data from one screen to another. Same way जब भी आप log in करते हो, when you log into a particular screen and you want the user name to be displayed in the subsequent screen, what you can do is you can just simply within the intent you can initialize intent.putExtra username and then give the name that has been the user whichever has logged in right now. So this is how you can work with the spinner and the adapter classes. You can work with the intent for data passing from one activity screen to the second activity screen. Okay. So I hope till this part, if anyone has any doubts or query, we can take it, because the next thing that we are going to see now is the broadcast receivers. I'll come back to the intent for another example in a few more minutes, but till this part, if anyone has any questions, we can take it. Please unmute and ask if you have any. Okay, fine. So now the next part that I'm showing you is the battery status example. This is battery status is an example for a broadcast receiver. So if you all remember, I've already explained the concept regarding the broadcast receiver. So when we talk about a broadcast receiver, what are they? So it's a component that let the system deliver an event to the app outside of a regular user flow. Let's say आपने charging connect करा, you plugged in a charger, maybe there is a battery low, there is some WhatsApp notification is there, right? Maybe there is some system interruption is there, maybe there is system update is there, or maybe your screen is there. Then any such thing that you carry out, all you can cater to with help of a broadcast receiver. सो जस्ट फॉर अ क्विक वॉक थ्रू, जैसे इवेंट हैंडलिंग हमने देखा, जहाँ पे एक इवेंट आपका होगा, उसके लिए एक कंपोनेंट रहेगा. यू हैव अ कंपोनेंट विच कैन जनरेट अ इवेंट, which type of a event is getting generated and who is listening to that event. Similarly, in a scenario of a broadcast receiver, whenever you are creating a broadcast receiver, तो अगर ब्रॉडकास्ट रिसीवर में लेट्स से लो पावर और बैटरी लो बैटरी का मैंने एक नोटिफिकेशन रखा है. अभी ये लो पावर लो बैटरी नोटिफिकेशन मेरे को किसको दिखाना है? मेरे सभी एप्लीकेशन को दिखाना है, या फिर जो एप्लीकेशन जो रिसोर्स इंटेंसिव है उसको दिखाना है? तो यहाँ पे वही क्वेश्चन वापस आपका आएगा. जब भी आप ब्रॉडकास्ट रिसीवर यूज कर रहे हो, फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल यू नीड टू कॉन्फ़िगर दैट ब्रॉडकास्ट रिसीवर, एंड द सेकंड थिंग इज दैट who is listening to that broadcast. Am I listening to that broadcast? Does my particular application, let's say my within my mobile environment, I have an application to call someone, I have an application to capture an image, I have an application to watch OTT or anything. So if I am connecting to a charger, which particular application needs to know that I have charger connected? Right. So again, that's the thing. Does this notification impacts the work of an application or not? That you need to know. So as far as low power modes are there, battery, maybe charging getting connected is there, or maybe a screenshot getting captured is there, whether my application needs to know or not. And according to that, do they need to show me a notification or not? I'll give a standard example for the same. Maybe most of you have experienced it as well, irrespective of Android or any other OS that you are working on. If you go to any banking application, try to do a screen capture, try to do a screenshot. Many such application will not allow it. Many banking application does not allow you to capture a screen, because that is where you are sharing your private details, you are sharing your account details, or maybe that particular things can be on the wrong hand, right? So when you click on this one, they get a notification, you get a notification of that, of the same thing, that you are not allowed, or it will not show you anything, it will show you a black screen or something like that. So that is the usual scenario. It may occur in some of the same thing can occur in the OTT platforms. If you have used that, whenever you try to do a screen capture, they'll not allow you and they'll prompt you a message. So same way you can use it over here. So what I am doing is I have created one broadcast receiver over here. Now see, whenever you are working with the normal Java classes, there are two things that you can work with. So I'll come back to this example in a minute only. So let's say if I want to create a maybe a activity screen, so what I can do is I'll simply right click on my Java folder. I can go to the new and I can click on an activity, and from there I have several options available. Same way you have several other UI components that you can work with. So whatever type of a UI component you want to work with, you can simply select it from this particular part. So if you are having an activity, you can simply click, let's say, empty activity. And as soon as you do it, it will ask you the name of the activity. It will ask you the name of the layout file, and you want to make it as a launcher activity or not. सो लॉन्चर एक्टिविटी बेसिकली मीन्स कि ये आपका जब भी एप्लीकेशन ऑन होगा, सबसे पहला यही स्क्रीन ओपन होना चाहिए जो आपका नया आप एक्टिविटी बना रहे हो वो वाला। अगर नहीं चाहिए तो आपको यहाँ पे टिक नहीं करना है। सो जब भी आप एक्टिविटी बनाओगे तो दिस पर्टिकुलर पार्ट, दिस पर्टिकुलर new Android activity form will allow you to create a Java file. It will allow you to create a layout XML file, and it will also mention the detail of the same in a manifest file. But अभी आपको एक्टिविटी के अलावा जो भी फाइल बनाने हैं, इफ यू आर डूइंग इट एक्सप्लिसिटली विदाउट यूजिंग द अप्रोच, द इनबिल्ट अप्रोच ऑफ फाइल क्रिएशन, you need to mention the rest of the thing. So अगर आप सर्विस बना रहे हो तो it can easily be done. If you want to create another custom view component, you can easily do. But as far as the broadcast receivers and other things are there, आपको explicitly mention करना पड़ेगा manifest file में कि ये मेरा broadcast receiver है. So this is the approach for creating the file. Now let's understand how the broadcast receiver works. So you can see that I have created one class which is a battery status which extends a broadcast receiver. So what I am doing over here is that I'm extracting जब भी ये broadcast receiver, whenever someone will call this broadcast receiver. Now see, this is a broadcast receiver means, do I need to have a message for the same? Can my application have a message for the same? So if yes, whenever the broadcast receiving or the reception is on and someone can receive is, what should I do? So that task you need to mention over here. So here I am using intent.getAction. Now this particular line you need to configure it based on the manifest code that you have mentioned. So within the manifest code, the first thing when you work with the broadcast receiver, you need to mention that this is my receiver and this is the task that it should do. Just a moment. I'll show you the receiver part over here. So I have a receiver code over here. So in this, I have mentioned that this is a Java class where my receiver code is present. And using a intent filter, I'm mentioning that what particular type of broadcast receiver this is, right? So within the intent filter, I'm mentioning that this is a battery change receiver. So whatever standard thing that Android is providing it to you, आपको जितने भी मे बी बैटरी चेंज इज देयर, बैटरी गेटिंग चार्ज इज देयर, पावर डिस्कनेक्टेड इज देयर, योर एयरप्लेन मोड इज देयर, आपको जिसका भी आप जो भी टास्क कैरी आउट करते हो और योर एप्लीकेशन वांट टू रजिस्टर टू, यू कैन सिंपली सिलेक्ट इट फ्रॉम द ड्रॉप डाउन एंड अकॉर्डिंगली मेंशन. सो लेट्स से बैटरी चेंज्ड, battery low, battery okay is there, camera button is there, date is getting changed, right? So there are several things available over here. Let's say you are connecting an earphone, maybe you are your phone state is getting changed, or its user is connected or disconnected, wallpaper is getting changed, right? So whatever you want to carry out, so first thing when you are creating a broadcast receiver, you need to mention it. So see, the part of the receiver is that we are having the receiver XML snippet over here. Within that, I'm mentioning the Java class where my receiver code is present. And with help of the intent filter action, what with this intent filter, within that I need to define ki what is the task of it, what it will do, right? So here I'm mentioning that this is a receiver, this broadcast receiver is getting used for the battery change purpose. So same thing now with help of this particular snippet, whenever this particular Java file is getting called, so I know that what action it will do. So I know that the action for this particular snippet is battery changed. So this particular battery status किसके लिए यूज होने वाला है? बैटरी चेंज के लिए. तो यहाँ पे हम वही एक्शन को वापस एक्सट्रैक्ट करते हैं. जस्ट इन केस यूजर हैज नॉट डन एनी मिस्टेक इन द मैनिफेस्ट, दिस विल वर्क प्रॉपरली. सो अगेन आई एम वेरीफाइंग दैट द एक्शन इज बैटरी चेंज्ड ओनली. अगर यहाँ पे कोई और एक्शन होता, अगर आपने गलती से यहाँ पे बैटरी चेंज के बदले बैटरी लो लिख लिया होता, लेट्स से, and यहाँ पे within the action you have mentioned battery change, then this broadcast receiver will not work. So just in order to validate that the code that you have mentioned in the manifest file and the code that you are mentioning in this Java file is correct or not, so we are extracting the intent.getAction. तो get action ये बताता है कि आपने वहां पे कौन सा action configure किया है for the broadcast receiver. So here what I am doing is I am defining a message that whatever current battery level is there, I'm extracting intent.getInt extra, just a simple level over here, and then I'm extracting the current battery and then displaying it in a toast. Toast is just a simple pop-up that we have already seen in a part. So this is how the broadcast receiver is being configured. Now see, in the manifest, you define what type of a broadcast receiver is. In the Java class, you mention that जब भी ये broadcast receiver call होगा आपको क्या करना है. अभी तीसरा पार्ट जहां पे आप एक्चुअली ये broadcast receiver को यूज करने वाले हो. So within the login.java, if I get back to the previous state, मैंने 3 लाइन कमेंट किया था कि मेरा broadcast receiver कैसा होना चाहिए. So here what I am doing is that I'm creating an object of the battery status, which is my broadcast receiver, and I'm using the intent filter again for the action battery change. So as soon as I do this, I'm mentioning that my intent filter is for this one, and then I'm registering the receiver. So as soon as you register a receiver, whenever there is a change in a battery, it will give me a prompt that battery has changed. So this is how it works. You mention the broadcast type or the broadcast thing that you want to carry out, what should be done whenever it is being called, and who can call, and whenever the call is getting done, what should be done. That is registering a receiver. So you see that I am having a toast battery level. So let's say I'm just changing a simple text over here. Battery now is. So now whenever the login screen is being activated, whenever you call a login screen, this particular broadcast receiver that you have registered with the login screen will be activated and it will show you a pop-up of the battery which is there. Okay, so let me enter user password. I'll hide the keypad. I'll click on the login button. So as soon as now you can see battery now is 100%. I'll click it one more time. Battery now is 100%. I'll click it one more time. Battery now is 100%. So this is how the broadcast receiver works. So when you want to have some prompt notification based on some activity getting performed, so broadcast receiver, not necessary it can work for a single activity. It can work across all the activities present in your mobile. So whatever thing you want to configure, you can simply mention it as a broadcast receiver and appropriately configure it where you want to get the information regarding the same broadcast. So that is how the broadcast will work in our this particular scenario. So just a very quick walkthrough what we have done up till now. We have seen the example of the calculator screen. The calculator helps us understand various UI component. It helps us how to do the event handling. We have also seen the student registration form to understand the other UI components, work with the event handling, how to pass the data from one particular activity screen to the other activity screen. The third thing that we did, we learned regarding the login part, how to validate and how to work with the broadcast receiver. So that we have done is a part of this. And at the beginning, we have also seen one sample activity, which is for the understanding the basic layout and the basic structure of the Android application environment. So if you have any queries up till this stage, you can point it out. Maybe you can unmute and ask. Otherwise, we'll go to the last part of the session, which is actually more important and interesting, and which we actually do every now and then. Okay, fine. So given a time frame, I'll move to the next part of it, that is intent. So अभी तक हमने जो intent देखा, वो हमने सिर्फ एक ही purpose के लिए देखा. कैसे डेटा आप एक एक्टिविटी से दूसरे एक्टिविटी में पास कर सकते हो. लाइक फॉर अ स्टूडेंट फॉर्म 1, आई एम टेकिंग द डेटा, I'm creating an intent for the same. I'm initializing the data and I'm passing it to the second activity. Within the second activity, what we are doing is we are extracting the data given by the intent and we are displaying it on our screen. So that's it. So this is just a standard example of working with the intent, that is from going from one place to another. Now here in this scenario, we are going from the activity 1 to the activity 2, but we are not coming back to the activity 1. Even if we go to the activity 1, there is no change in it. So that is how the intent is getting worked in this particular scenario. So now I'll show you one more example first, and then we'll understand the code part for the same. Okay. So now this is another screen that you are seeing. I have an intent application. Now within this application, I have a four different buttons. In the task is already mentioned on the button that what they will do. So let's say I'll click on the first one. I just want you to notice the flow of the activity. Later on, we'll go to the technical concepts of the same. Okay. So as soon as I did open URL, you can see that google.com is getting open. I'm on the browser screen. The very first thing it is doing is I click on the open URL. It goes to the browser and it mentioned google.com. That is the first thing which I am having on this screen of the intent. Okay. I'll just go back using the back button. Okay. The second option which I am having right now is call someone. So I'll again show you the second one. This one it might take a minute. Okay, just one moment. I'll re-execute it. It might have stopped in between. Okay. Okay, let me re-execute this intent again to understand the rest of the processes which are there. One I have shown was respective to the google.com, which is getting opened when we click on a button. So rest of the applications, rest of the things that we are having in this intent with respect to calling someone, maybe dialing up someone, or maybe opening a Google map over here. So I'll show you the perspective of how you can do it here. So I'll just wait for a minute if it executes properly. Okay, I'll let it execute, and in the meantime, we'll see the code and the layout for the same. Let me open the layout file. Oh, Okay, just a moment. I'll just reconfigure this one. I think there is some issue on the Android Studio. Okay, maybe in the meantime, you can work on the demonstrations that we have done. I'll just reopen this particular intent part in a minute. Okay, now it is back. Okay, so now on this particular part of the intent, as I priorly showed that we can flow the data from one screen to another. So that is one of the functionality that you can carry out with the intent. Now, apart from this one, with help of an intent, if we are not sure that which application to go to or which particular activity screen you want to open with respective to the current application or the current task on the hand, you can also have the implicit intent. So I'll show a few examples explicitly where you can use this intent. So one such example of using an intent is like maybe from your application, you want to share your location. So let's say on a WhatsApp, you are sharing a location. So you might be using, let's say, Google Map or any other map application that you are having. So for that, we also have the intent. So intent allows us to communicate with the components of the other part, other application. Maybe you can communicate with the map, you can communicate with the maybe your gallery, or maybe you can communicate with your audio video device, audio video drivers which are there as well. So here on the very first example, what I have kept is I've set an example where what I am doing is that whenever user clicks on open a map or maybe open a particular URL which is there. So in this URL example, I'm here, first thing that we am doing is I'm setting a URI, and the URI which I have set over here is a google.com. So as soon as the user clicks on that button, this button will transfer, or it will go from your activity screen to the browser screen, and it will open the URL which is google.com. Any application you have a help page or maybe an page in order to show some static information to the user from a website, you can also have an intent which allows to go to this particular part. I think there are some issues on my Android Studio part. So in the meantime, it configures properly. I'll explain you the code parts that you can work with the intent. So intent over here, you can see I is equals to new intent, Android content dot intent action view. Now see here, there are few things that you need to understand with respective to the content that you are having or you are going to work with. There are several intent categories. So first of all, within the intent, you need to mention what action you want to carry out, what category you want to carry out, and accordingly, you can configure the rest of the parameter. So like in this particular example, which I am working with the URI, where I'm working with the URL which is there. So here I am setting the action as a view, and the data which I am using, the data is coming from my URL which I have mentioned for the google.com. Now the rest of the part of the intent will remain same. तो आपको एक बार आपका इंटेंट रेडी है, आपको एक्टिविटी को स्टार्ट करना है। अगर आपको वो एक्टिविटी से कोई भी डेटा वापस नहीं चाहिए, तो फंक्शन यू विल यूज ऑलवेज इज अ स्टार्ट एक्टिविटी। तो स्टार्ट एक्टिविटी का पर्पस यही है कि आप पहले एक्टिविटी से दूसरी एक्टिविटी में जा रहे हो, इरिस्पेक्टिव ऑफ व्हाट यू डू इन द सेकेंड एक्टिविटी। सो सेकेंड एक्टिविटी में आपका जो भी टास्क होगा वो एक्टिविटी वन को डिस्टर्ब नहीं करेगा, इट विल नॉट डिस्टर्ब द फ्लो ऑफ द एक्टिविटी वन, it will be always on the top of the activity one. So even if you kill the activity two, the activity one will be persisted in your application. So here, the first thing that we are doing is we are doing an example of a Google Map. As you see, same way within the action view category, you also have, you can pass an URI for a telephone number. So let's say if I want to call to someone, I can directly pass the telephone number. So these are basically the TEL and the number is a snippet of the intent. So there are some standard snippet of the intent which allows you to directly call someone, or maybe go to an gallery application or maybe an image capture application and you can directly open it. So this is the second part of the intent, where what I am doing is within the action view, I want to call someone. So that also I can do. Now see, the next particular part or the example is basically I want to, maybe if I don't want to call someone, or maybe I want to change, or I want user to have a flexibility to enter the number, what I am doing is I am opening a dial up activity page. So what this will do is that आपका जो dial screen है with the numbers it will open. So just that it will go to the phone application, calling application, and it will show the numbers so that you can enter the number on your own. So there are few flexibilities this intent provide, that you can communicate, you can pass a data, you can communicate with the different application on your mobile. Now the fourth example that we are discussing in this particular intent is that apart from going to a particular location, maybe you can work with the map application present in your application. So let's say Google Map is there. Now, if you have used, I think most of we have already used the Google Map. So there are a few things that you can do with help of the Google Map. So the first thing that you can do with the Google Map is just open the Google Map screen. That is also intent can do. Second thing, I have a location. Let's say I have a Google Map interlinked with a particular location. Let's say Google Map, and then I'm showing the location as Ahmedabad or Gandhinagar or any other thing. I can do it with the intent. Third thing, within the Ahmedabad, I want to show the restaurants to a particular set of the application, or within the set of the application. That all can do within the intent. So intent allows me to go to a specific location either on the basis of the data entered by the user, either on the hard-coded strings that we are mentioning, either on the location details that we are providing over here. So intent allows us to work with the map as well. So you can see an example over here on my screen. So for the URI, what I am doing is I am showing the geolocation of a particular area where I want to show the schools, right? So here I am mentioning the latitude and the longitude, and my search string is school. So for this particular search string of a school, what I am doing is I am showing the intent. So whenever you click on this particular intent, whenever you click on this button of an intent for a map, what it will do is, given a location, given to a geolocation, what it will search? It will search school as the text, as a search string over here. And then what we are doing is we are also initializing, we are setting this package. Now see, in this third line of the code for the map intent, सबसे पहले हमने उसका स्टैंडर्ड लोकेशन बताया, सेकंड उसका इंटेंट बनाया. Now the third thing that we are doing is which particular application do I want to open. So if you are already having an application, or if you know multiple applications on your mobile phone which can work with this particular intent, and you want to have a flexibility to user, so you can accordingly set the package for the same over here. So in this particular scenario, what I am doing is I am setting the package of the Google Map, since I want to use the Google Map as my standard application to open this particular page, or rather a specific location over here. So you can see this one example of working with the intent where you can work with the map. So within the same set, I have the other few snippets of the code which may change. I'll just walk you through the code for this one. Okay, so next thing that I'm doing is, first of all, in the first geolocation, I want to search for the school. In the second geolocation, let's say I want to search for the restaurants. I think there are changes. Okay. Just 1 minute, please. Okay, this is it. Add dot layout dot intent activity underscore intent. Hey, my layout for the four buttons which I am having. Now, as we were discussing regarding the Google Map feature that we can directly open from the intent. So let's say you are placing a small QR code, or maybe you are placing a link to your Google Map for maybe your conference or FDP or anything. So you can easily do it on the application as well. You can just what you need to do is you need to configure a appropriate geolocation, and you need to define the package that you want to use. So now let's see for this particular map application, I have defined that google.android.apps.map. So whenever I click on this particular intent, by default, it will go to the Google map and it will show me the location. So that also I can configure it with help of an intent. So the other thing that you can do with this particular intent is you can also, as I have already mentioned, that you are not, if you are not mentioning an application on the end, what it will do is it will allow you to select the application at the runtime, and it will show that these are the set of applications. Out of that, you need to select that which one you want to call. So these are just some of the sample examples of how to work with the Google Map directly. Now, to work with, what I will do is I'll just hide this Google Map feature. So now this particular part of the code where I'm not mentioning that which particular map application I want to use, you are supposed to notice the change when we run the application. So what I'll do is I'll let the application run in a moment. Till that particular time, we'll understand the other concepts of the intent. So, as we know that from this particular scenario, we can maybe jump to the other application available on our device, or maybe you can jump to the activity screen in your similar application, in the application that you are working on when you are doing an intent. So, that is the another scenario where you can work with the intent. Now, the two applications for the intent that we have discussed, in the first, we pass the data. In the second one, we just open the different set of an application. However, in both the application, we did not extracted the data back to the previous activity screen. So the third usage of the intent is basically how to extract data back from the user. So let's say from activity number one, which is basically my login activity, I'm entering the username and the password. I'll go to the activity number two. In the activity number two, I'll just display the inbox messages of the user whose credentials have been entered. On the screen number three, where I'm composing an email, or whether I'm maybe deleting an email. So as soon as you compose an email, you send an email to someone, obviously there is one notification or maybe a one line subject in the content line which is being displayed in your email application saying that the email has been sent, or you have received an email, or you have composed an email, or email is in a draft. So what happens in that scenario? So in that scenario, what you are doing is from particular intent, you go through to the intent number two. The intent number two will do some task. Intent number two will stop. It will complete its task, go back to the intent number one with some set of an information. So this particular part of this intent or working with the intent is basically known as intent that gives you a result back, or a activity, start activity for result. Now, when I talk about the Android development scenario, so there is a deprecated version of the Android where you have start activity for result. सो इट सेज दैट अगर आपका एक्टिविटी वन से आप एक्टिविटी टू में जा रहे हो, आपके एक्टिविटी टू का जो रिजल्ट है वो आपको वापस एक्टिविटी वन में चाहिए, तो आप क्या करोगे? स्टार्ट एक्टिविटी फॉर रिजल्ट. Otherwise, you simply call a start activity. So this start activity for a result you might see in some of the literature or some of the references of the Android documentation, but the thing is deprecated. So for that we have the contracts and we have the registers that we are going to work with. So I'll show you the code first over here for the same. So I'll go to the intent one, which I'm having over here. So let me just open the code part for the intent 1 and the 2. I'll stop this maybe. So it is taking a longer time and glitching the application. Okay. So now let's understand from one activity screen to the second activity screen and getting it back. So now you can see over here, I have stopped this emulator maybe due to some heavy load issues. So now let's understand this one. So in the intent number 1, I have one edit text, I have a button, and I have a text view. So I'll show you the layout part first for this one. That is the intent 1. So you can see over here in this particular intent 1, what we are doing is we are just simply passing the data from the intent 1 to the intent 2, whatever name I have entered over here. So for that, I'm having a two button, one for the explicit and one for the implicit. Same way in the activity 2, that is the intent activity 2, what I am having is I'm having a simple button over here and one button to go back to the previous screen. So now here what we are doing is we are passing it from one place to another. So in a scenario of the current versions of the Android, we have a support of a activity result launcher. So activity result launcher का काम क्या रहेगा? वही काम है जो आपका नॉर्मल आप एक एक्टिविटी स्क्रीन से दूसरे एक्टिविटी स्क्रीन पे जा रहे हो और वहां से वापस कुछ डेटा ला रहे हो फर्स्ट एक्टिविटी स्क्रीन के लिए, तो वो आपका यहाँ से कॉन्फ़िगर करना पड़ेगा. दैट इज एक्टिविटी रिजल्ट लॉन्चर. सो नाउ लेट्स अंडरस्टैंड दिस एक्टिविटी रिजल्ट लॉन्चर. So here what we do is, apart from the normal steps that we carried out for the creating an intent, so let's say I have extracted the data that a user has entered, be it a name, be it a number or anything. Here I am informing that from intent 1, I want to go to the intent number 2 and I want to pass the data that a user has entered. So now let's break this particular task in detail. तो इंटेंट 1 से हम जाने वाले हैं इंटेंट 2 पे और यहाँ पे हमने जो भी डेटा यूजर ने एंटर किया है उसको पास करना है. नाउ टू पास दिस पर्टिकुलर डेटा आई एम यूजिंग सम पर्टिकुलर ऑब्जेक्ट एम स्टार्ट फॉर रिजल्ट and the function that I am using is a launch and I am passing the intent object. So this particular thing is nothing but an object of a activity result launcher over here. Now how does this activity result launcher works? So in a scenario where I want to get back the data, I need to register for the result. So when you register for the result, it says that मेरे को second activity से कुछ result वापस आने वाला है. So I need to maintain the state of the activity 2 and I also need to maintain my state to get the data back into the correct component that I want to do. So here what we are doing is we are registering for the activity result. So we are passing an object for the start activity for result. Now please remember, start activity for a result is the function available in the previous versions of the Android, but in the current version it is deprecated. If you want to use this one, you need to use the concept of activity result launcher. So here we are saying that we are going to start a activity to get the result back. Now, within this result callback, we have two parts. One is the start activity for result and the result callback. So, on activity result function is the place where we will actually extract the data coming from the second application. So, if the second application is properly, the activity 2 is properly executed, if it is returned some data, I'll extract that data and I will initialize that data in my component. Okay. So I'll close this one. I'll start the intent number 1 and we'll understand the concept parallelly with this one. So since intent number 3 part is taking a bit of a load on the emulator, I'll keep it on a hold for a minute. If it executes, I'll demonstrate it at the last. So let me just execute the current example that we are discussing. It's installed. Okay, so you can see on my screen right now, I have a one option for the name. I have two button, explicit and an implicit, and I also have the result over here. So you can see over here, I have a result label. So let me enter something over here first of all. Okay, I have a Android written over here. Now I'll click on a explicit button. So I have a two button register. So one is the explicit and one is the implicit button. Now what is the task over here? So for the button which I have done, what I have configured is I have two different tasks that I am going to work with. So let's understand or let's click on the explicit one. So as soon as I click on the explicit button, I'm going to the second activity screen. सबसे पहली एक्टिविटी में मैंने लिखा था एंड्रॉइड, यहाँ पे मैंने वही चीज को डेटा पास किया. So that is here, this line number 65 you can refer that from first of all we are going from the activity 1 to the activity 2, that is line number 64. The second thing that we are doing is we are passing the data, that is line number 65. The line number 66 is basically to start this particular application. So now let's say I'm entering some more data over here in the last part. Maybe a welcome message. And I click on a button which is a go back. So you can see that I go back to the activity screen number 1 and I see a welcome message which I have entered in the activity 2. So that is how you can use an intent to get the data back from the subsequent screen that you are going to work with. Now let me go to the code part for this one and we'll see. So here in the second part that we did, आपको एक से दूसरे एक्टिविटी पे गए, दैट इज इंटेंट टू पे गए आप. इंटेंट टू में हमने क्या किया, इंटेंट टू में वही चीज वापस किया कि अगर यूजर ने कोई डेटा पास किया है उसको एक्सट्रैक्ट किया, दैट इज द एंड्रॉइड स्ट्रिंग, and we displayed it back on the screen over here. Now the second thing that we did was we kept one button to go back to the screen number 1. So on the screen number, to go back to the screen number 1, what we are doing is we are extracting the newly entered data, which is a welcome string. We create a new object of the intent and then we store it in a key value pair, right? Which is a pass data 2 is our key in this scenario. And we set result equals to activity okay in the object type. Now see, here this particular function which is a set result, तो ये जो आप set result करोगे, ये result का जो भी डेटा है वो आपका डेटा कहाँ पे जाएगा, ये इंटेंट 1 के लिए आपने जो रिजल्ट लॉन्चर ऑब्जेक्ट बनाया है उसके पास जाएगा. यहाँ पे आप जो देख रहे हो आपके पास एक्टिविटी रिजल्ट का ऑब्जेक्ट है. सो इंटेंट नंबर 2 में हमने यहाँ पे जो लिखा सेट रिजल्ट, तो इसमें हम दो चीज पास कर रहे हैं, वेदर द रिजल्ट इज ओके और नॉट, दैट इज दिस एक्टिविटी इज परफॉर्म्ड properly. If yes, we set it to result okay, otherwise not, right? And the object of the intent. So here we have the new object of the intent, which is basically storing our newly entered data. So we call this particular function. So this set result function will go to this particular place, that is the line number 36. So in the line number 36, once you have entered with the data and once you have entered with the result state, we check that whether the result state is proper or not. So if the result code that we obtain is okay, that is the result that we have obtained is equals to the result okay, then what we do is we extract the data, we initialize the data to the text view which we are having and we display it. So you can see over here, we are displaying the data over here, welcome in this particular scenario. So just to reiterate one more time, because this is this particular result launcher in the activity contract and the activity result are being supported in the current versions of the Android. If you go back to the previous version, or if you are working with the deprecated version, there is the option for start activity for result. So let's say afternoon. I'll again click on an explicit. You can see the screen over here. I have afternoon, I have an explicit button, implicit button, and a welcome note. So you can see afternoon, which I have entered in the screen number 1 is getting on the screen number 2. However, the welcome message which I entered in the activity 2 is not getting stored. Now, this is a reason you need to know that whenever you are working with the activity, the activities are getting stacked one above another. तो अगर आप कोई एक्टिविटी जो आपका लॉन्चर एक्टिविटी नहीं है उससे अगर आप वापस जाते हो तो वो एक्टिविटी डिस्ट्रॉय हो जाएगा, उसका एक नया इंस्टेंस स्टार्ट होगा. So like in this particular scenario, the activity 2 which you are working on is getting recreated. This is a new instance of the activity 2. So here, as soon as you finish, you are closing the application and you are creating a new application. So here, let me enter something more. Maybe let's say programming as a message, and I'll go back. So I can see a programming message being displayed over here. So now there are two things to remember. Activity 1 maintains the state. Activity 2, आप जा रहे हो उसका नया इंस्टेंस क्रिएट हो रहा है, आप वापस आओगे उसका इंस्टेंस डिस्ट्रॉय हो जाएगा. So this is how the activity stacks are also maintained to understand the concept of the activity working. Okay, and the last part for the activity, this demonstration, you can see I have clicked on an implicit. Now see where it is going. This is going to my gallery screen where I have few videos present, which are just the sample videos of the Android. And I also have one particular part that is a calculator test example as a screenshot over here. So now I have an option over here. I'll click on this one, right? So that's it. So this is the second one. So here you can see the example of the intent where I'm changing the entire application. ये example हमने already देखा that we can go to Google Map, we can go to maybe we can go to call someone, we can redial, or we can go to any other screen present in our application. So same way I can also go to capture a image and get the image back on my screen. So here the second button which I have kept is just for our understanding purpose, that I have one more intent, that is the implicit intent, where I am creating the intent object, where I am setting the action as a view action. I do not want to perform anything. I just want to go to that screen and just I want to go through that application. I do not want to extract the data. Second thing you can see over here, the set type. So as soon as you mention the set type, you are indicating कि आपको कौन से type का application चाहिए, कौन सा application चाहिए वो नहीं, आपको कौन से type का application चाहिए. So as soon as you set this particular type, it will mention that I want to work with the image wherever the images are being stored. So you can open a gallery, you can open a third party app or anything, and you can flag it as a new task and start the activity. So these are the ways you can also work with the intent. So just to quick summarize, intent can work within the application, intent can work outside the application, or intent can work based on the task that you want to carry out. So I have one more intent which I have kept just for our example purpose, which I have already shown you, that you can also maybe mention a URL and you can also go to that particular intent page or view that intent page and start it. So this is how your intent will work on an overall scenario. So these are all the applications and the examples for the Android demonstration. So if you have any queries or any doubts in this particular part, we can go through this screen or maybe any particular page. Okay, I'll also open the intent 3 in the parallel if it works. Okay, anyways, I'll keep it running. So if it loads properly, I can show it to you. Any other queries or doubts from your side? So this was just a quick overview on to begin yourself with an Android application development. So just a quick summary that we have four main components to work with. That is activity, service, broadcast receiver, and the content provider. And if each one of them have their own tasks to do, and you will need each one of them when you are creating a full-fledged Android application. You cannot simply just say that I have all the activities in my Android application, it is done. No, I need activities, I need broadcasts, I need data to be stored by the content, I need the background running services. So those all things you will be needing over here, and those all things you need to configure it properly through your programming part. That is the logical part to develop using either Java, Kotlin, Groovy, or anything. You have a layout files to display the UI components to the user. You have a palette options available to select the various components which are there. You have an attribute, and the main part is the entry point of this Android application. That is the manifest file. So in a manifest file, it's mandatory to mention the activity places which are there. That is the name of the activities which will be there if you are doing it explicitly. If you are using the inbuilt functions to do that, it will be directly configured. You don't need to worry. So you need to mention the activity, you need to mention the services, receivers, you need to mention even the permissions that you require. So just to given a time frame, I've shown you a quick overview to begin with. So there are a few other advanced concepts which you might delve into. Maybe you can go into the details of how to work with the image, how to work with the video, how to work with the permissions which are there. Maybe let's say when you are maybe developing an application, or you have installed the application for the first time, it will ask the user for the permission. So user may click on the permission, allow once, allow always, or never, or any such thing. That is also an important part to understand. That is the Android permission. You can also delve into the details of a recycler view, which is another important advanced concept. So which will allow you to have a reusability of the multiple Android components. And you can also delve into the details of the Android testing, which is easily supported by this Android instrumented test over here. So you can see this one, this instrumented test. Just check that whether the things that you are carrying out, you can have a small snippet of the test cases before you actually release your application, that whether it is working properly or not, whether the data 2 plus 2 is equals to 4 or not. That also simple test you can carry out. So you can carry out the instrumented and the unit test over here. You can mention your test, what test you want to carry out, and accordingly, like let's say this one, whether the addition operator is working properly or not, or whether let's say your equal to operator is for some other purpose, if it is working properly or not. So that's it from my side. If you have any questions pertaining to code or the technical part, I can hold on to the screen for a minute or so.
Any question, participants?
Okay, and these are few of the resources which you can refer to, which I have already mentioned. Because since when you are working with a mobile application development or mobile operating systems, I would prefer that rather than sticking to any reference book, please stick to their original documentation, because they are very good reference articles. There are very good examples given over there. Because if you stick to any reference book, this is my personal experience, you are teaching something which is deprecated. So please go to maybe their standard documentation, any programming language, any mobile application development, because their online documentation will always show you the recent versions and the things which are there. And also prefer to work with the latest code, because many a time students face the issue that they've learned the thing, or maybe we are sometimes the things are like we are teaching the things which are compatible to our system but not compatible everywhere. So this is just my thought that please make sure to work with the latest versions and refer to the latest documentation, so that you can stay in line with what is being in the market as of now. Otherwise, things will happen that student learn, and at the later stage they say that this is not working, or this is not allowed in the current version, or not being installed on our mobiles and everything. So please refer to those documentations which are online. So I'm here for a few more minutes if you have any other technical doubts or anything. Otherwise, you can contact me on my email or on LinkedIn.
Okay. Yes, any question from the audience?
Is there any, maybe I think I need to reopen the Zoom.
Okay, I think no question.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon to everyone. On the behalf of LDR ITR, I, R.C. Goswami, extend my heartful gratitude for giving me the opportunity to deliver the vote of thanks for this embracing Android programming session. Okay, a big thank you to all the participants for their enthusiastic involvement, which added a great value to this program, and also our esteemed speaker Rachna Mehta ma'am for sharing their expert insight and knowledge. Your contribution have truly made this session insightful and impactful. Once again, a thank you for making today's event success. Now, we will meet tomorrow at the 10 a.m. Okay, thank you once again to all of you.
Just a moment.
Okay,
I
thank you.
think. Okay, fine. Thank you, everyone. So if you have any doubts, you can contact me anytime. Thank you.
I
Thank you, sir.
personally thank you, ma'am, because you took care. We were having internet problem over here, so you took charge of the meeting and keep
That's
started
okay.
recording, and you have done our job. So
No,
really,
it's okay.
thank you very much, ma'am.
We are in the same field. We understand the scenario very well. So it's not thanks that I need to have it. So I personally, it's okay. I can take it to 1 or 2 or more if anyone is interested. But I think given a time frame, I've tried to cover the things that are like approximately you cover it in a 3-4 week scenario to have a brief overview on it. And thank you to the audience and thank you, sir, for the opportunity. Thank you. We'll meet soon.
Thank you, participants. I assure you
Okay,
that all of you will get the recordings, first session recording video available